Can you imagine this? You're on the phone with someone you totally care about. They're lost. They're counting on you to save them. Then bam. You hear them scream, "Oh shit," and the call just dies. For the parents of 19-year-old Brandon Swanson, this wasn't some crazy movie scene. It was the start of a real-life nightmare that's now lasted 17 years. He literally vanished into the Minnesota night, and even after a gigantic search and some super weird clues, no one has found a single trace of him. It's insane. Tonight, we are diving deep into the super unsettling disappearance of Brandon Swanson. It all kicked off on May 14th, 2008. What started as a simple problem, his car got stuck in a ditch after a night out celebrating college being over, quickly turned into one of the craziest unsolved missing person cases ever. Brandon, this young guy with his entire life ahead of him, just poof, gone. That last, super chilling phone call to his parents was the absolute last time anyone heard from him. So, what in the world happened out there in those dark fields? We're going to break down the timeline, the insane search, the confusing clues, and the biggest theories trying to explain how a young dude could just disappear off the face of the earth. All right. So Brandon Victor Swanson was born January 30th, 1989, in Marshall, Minnesota. From everything we hear, he was an awesome son and brother. He was a super responsible and smart student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College, studying renewable energy and wind turbines. Pretty cool, right? He'd graduated from Marshall High School in 2007 and decided to live at home with his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, and his younger sister, Jameen, while he was in college. People said he genuinely loved learning, especially science, and was a big reader. Get this. He was about 5'6", weighed around 120 pounds, had brown hair, blue eyes, and he wore glasses. So, the evening of May 13th, 2008, was supposed to be epic. Brandon and his buddies from the Canby campus of Minnesota West were celebrating the end of the spring semester. He hit up a couple of parties in Canby, a town like 30 miles from his home in Marshall. Friends said Brandon had a few drinks, but they didn't think he was totally wasted. Sometime after midnight, probably around 12:30 a.m. on May 14th, Brandon starts driving home in his green 2000 Chevrolet Lumina. He took a route with gravel roads, maybe a shortcut, you know? And it was on one of these super quiet rural roads that his night went completely sideways. He drove off the road, and his car got high-centered in a ditch. Basically, the car's bottom was stuck, and the wheels were just spinning. He wasn't hurt, but he was 100% stranded. At 1:54 a.m., Brandon does what literally anyone would do. He calls his parents. He told Brian and Annette that he'd yeeted his car into a ditch and wasn't totally sure where he was, but he thought he was near this tiny town called Lind, Minnesota. His parents, obviously freaking out, jumped in their truck immediately and drove out to find him. They even left their porch light on, a symbol of hope that, and this is heartbreaking, is still on today. But as they drove around Lind, flashing their lights while Brandon did the same, they just couldn't find him or his car. Can you imagine how frustrating that would be? Brandon stayed on the phone with them, though the calls kept dropping. Maybe because the reception in that rural area was garbage, or as they tried different stuff. His parents suggested he walk back to a friend's place in Lind, or to a nearby country club where there'd been a party earlier. But Brandon, maybe a bit confused or just totally misjudging how far things were in the pitch-black darkness, seemed determined to walk towards some lights he could see, thinking they were Lind. The longest and most important call started around 2:23 a.m. and lasted for a whopping 47 minutes. During this super long chat with his dad, Brian, Brandon described what he was seeing. He said he was cutting through fields to save time, that he'd climbed over some fences, and could hear water running nearby. He mentioned seeing lights he was walking towards, still totally convinced he was heading for Lind. His father tried to guide him, to figure out where his son actually was, all while they kept up their own insane search in the dark. Brian later said that even with the drinks earlier, Brandon didn't sound disoriented or confused during their calls, which makes this even weirder. A terrifying nosedive. While still on the phone with his father, Brandon suddenly yells, "Oh shit!" And just like that, the line went completely dead. His parents tried calling him back, again and again, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Panic mode engaged. They kept searching for him through those insane early morning hours, shouting his name, their headlights just cutting through the dark. But there was no sign of Brandon. As the sun started to come up on May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson was officially missing. Brian and Annette Swanson reported their son missing to the Lyon County Sheriff's Office just after sunrise, around 6:30 a.m. According to Brandon's parents, the first response from law enforcement wasn't as fast as they hoped. They were apparently told that it wasn't unusual for young guys his age to stay out all night after college parties, and that Brandon, being an adult, had the right to be missing. This early reaction would later seriously fuel the Swansons' fight for big changes in how missing adult cases are handled. But, as the hours ticked by, and the full story of that insane disconnected call became clearer, everyone realized how serious this was. Law enforcement started the process to get Brandon's cell phone records to try and figure out his location. And this is where a really crucial and totally baffling piece of information dropped. The cell tower data showed that Brandon's calls hadn't come from near land like he thought. Instead, the pings put him in an area about 25 miles away, near the town of Taunton, in a completely different direction. He'd been on the border of Lincoln and Lyon counties. We don't know if Brandon ever realized how incredibly far off he was about his location during those calls. Mind-blowing, this new info completely changed the search area. On the afternoon of May 14th, authorities found Brandon's Chevrolet Lumina. It was on a field approach road, near the Lincoln and Lyon County lines, about a mile and a half north of Highway 68. It was stuck on an incline, just like he'd said, with the wheels unable to get any grip, and the car was about 25 miles from land. His keys and cell phone were not in the car. Once the car was found, confirming Brandon's general area, a massive search effort exploded into action. The Lyon County and Lincoln County Sheriff's Offices got involved, along with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, BCA, fire departments, and hundreds of volunteers. The search area was gigantic and super tough. Fields, dense woods, and tons of water. They used aircraft, including a flyover by an aerial team, plus searchers on foot, on horseback, and on ATVs. It was an all-out blitz. One of the biggest leads came from the K-9 units. These were some serious search dogs. Bloodhounds from Codington County, South Dakota, were brought in. The dogs picked up Brandon's scent from his abandoned car and followed a trail for about 3 miles. The trail led west-northwest, mostly along field roads, across an abandoned farm, and then along the Yellow Medicine River. At one point along the riverbank, the trail seemed to lead right to the water's edge, as if it went into the stream. This discovery immediately made everyone think the worst. Brandon might have fallen into the river. The Yellow Medicine River in that spot could be knee-deep in some places, and up to 10 or 15 feet deep in others. It was also reportedly high and flowing pretty fast when he disappeared. Yikes. However, the K-9 track wasn't totally straightforward. While one dog initially hinted Brandon might have gone into the water, Annette Swanson later said that this same dog then picked up the trail again on the other side of the river. It followed the bank to another gravel road, heading north towards the Yellow Medicine County line before the scent finally just vanished. This suggested that if he had gone into the water, he might have actually gotten out and kept walking. Jeff Hassa, a professional search manager on the case, pointed out that cadaver dogs had also indicated a scent in the area, which he felt was enough reason to keep searching there. This is so confusing. Despite all these intense efforts, which eventually covered over 120 square miles, no physical evidence of Brandon, no clothes, no wallet, no cell phone, no glasses, was ever found. The terrain was incredibly difficult, with thick vegetation and tons of animal dens. Adding to the challenge, Brandon was blind in his left eye from birth, which would have seriously messed with his depth perception, especially in the dark, unfamiliar landscape. That's a huge disadvantage. The big initial searches eventually wound down. Sheriff Jack Bezecki of Lyon County personally walked a 2-mile stretch of the Yellow Medicine River every day for 30 days after Brandon disappeared. Searches started up again later that fall, after the crops were harvested, with dogs still following scents of human remains into an area northwest of Porter that hadn't been searched as thoroughly before. Over the years, the search focus sometimes shifted, for instance, to Mud Creek, which feeds into the Yellow Medicine River. But still, absolutely nothing. The fact that there's zero hard evidence has led to so many theories about what happened to Brandon Swanson. The most common ones focus on some kind of tragic accident. Theory 1. The river accident. This is probably the theory people talk about the most. The canine scent trail leading to, and according to some, into the Yellow Medicine River supports this. Brandon's last words, that sudden, "oh shit," could definitely point to a slip or fall into water. He'd also mentioned hearing running water to his father. But there are huge reasons to doubt it. Extensive searches of the river, with boats and divers, turned up absolutely nothing of Brandon or his belongings. His mother, Annette, has said she doubts he drowned in the river, especially since one of the dogs picked up his scent on the other side. Many feel that if his body was in the river, it probably would have surfaced or been found by now, after all the searching over the years. The river, while deep in spots, wasn't seen as unusually dangerous. So what gives? Theory 2. Hypothermia or exposure. This theory suggests Brandon might have died from the cold. Temperatures on the night of May 13, 2008 were chilly, around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If Brandon got wet, maybe from falling in the river, or even just from dew-soaked grass or sweat, hypothermia could have set in fast. That could lead to disorientation, collapse, and eventually death. Being disoriented could also explain why he might have wandered further than anyone expected. But again, the main argument against this is just how much area was searched. Over 120 square miles were combed. People. If he had simply collapsed and died from exposure, you'd think his remains, or at least some clothes or personal items like his glasses or cell phone, would have been found by now. It's like he just vaporized. Theory 3. Hidden hazards. The countryside is packed with potential hidden dangers. This theory suggests Brandon might have fallen into an old, unmarked well, a cistern, some abandoned farm equipment, or another hidden hazard. These things could easily hide a body forever. Another version of this idea is that he might have been accidentally run over by farm machinery later that morning, and the operator then hid what happened to avoid getting into mega trouble. The main problem here is that there's no direct evidence for any of this. While it sounds plausible in a general way, most known wells and hazards in the search areas were reportedly checked. So, still no answers. While accidents are the most talked about possibilities, other, darker theories have definitely been thrown around. Theory 4. Foul play. Is it possible Brandon ran into someone with bad intentions out there in the remote darkness? The sudden, cut-off phone call and the complete lack of any trace of him leave this door wide open. Maybe his flashing car lights attracted the wrong kind of attention, or he stumbled upon something or someone he really shouldn't have. However, there's no direct evidence pointing to foul play. No one reported any suspicious activity in that super empty area that night. The area around Taunton had an extremely low crime rate. The town only had about 135 people at the time. While you can't rule it out completely, law enforcement has said there's little to suggest foul play was involved. But you never know. Theory 5. Voluntary disappearance. This theory suggests Brandon chose to disappear and start a new life. It's something that often comes up in missing persons cases when no body is found. Like he just decided to peace out. But this seems highly unlikely in Brandon's case. He was on the phone with his parents for 47 minutes, actively trying to get help and telling them where he thought he was. He had no known reason to just abandon his life, no obvious money to do it, and his family strongly rejects this idea. They say he just wasn't the type of person to do that. and I kinda agree. Theory 6. Sudden medical emergency. Could Brandon have had some kind of sudden medical crisis? A seizure, a heart attack, or something else could have caused him to collapse or become severely disoriented, especially with the stress of the situation. The issue here is that Brandon had no known pre-existing medical conditions that would make this likely. And like with the other theories, the fact that no remains have ever been found is a huge challenge to this explanation. It's just mind-boggling. 17 years later, Brandon Swanson's disappearance is still a massive pile of troubling questions and a frustrating lack of answers. It's insane. The biggest one is the location discrepancy. Brandon was so sure he was near Lind, but his car and cell phone pings put him 25 miles away near Taunton. This basic confusion about where he was messed up the search right from the get-go, and is still one of the most perplexing parts of the case. How could he have been so wrong? What lights was he actually seeing? Some have wondered if he saw the red beacon on top of a grain elevator in Taunton and mistook it for lights in Lind. Who knows? Then there's the complete lack of physical evidence. Despite years of careful searching by professionals and volunteers, not a single thing belonging to Brandon, not his cell phone, his glasses, his keys, not even a scrap of his clothing, has ever turned up. It's like he and everything he had with him just vanished into thin air. This total absence of any trace is one of the most baffling and haunting things about this case. It's next level. Brandon's final words, "Oh, shit," still echo like crazy. What made him say that? Was it an animal? A sudden fall? Did he realize he was in a super dangerous spot? Or did he encounter another person? The call ending so abruptly right after those words just makes the mystery even deeper. The K9 scent trail, while a key piece of information, is also a bit confusing. Did it definitely end at the river? Or did it carry on, suggesting he kept moving? Different people have different interpretations of how the dogs behaved. And even if he did go into the river, the fact that no trace of him was found downstream is hard for many to accept. The passage of time, now over 17 years as of June 2025, has only made the mystery more profound. Leads have dried up, though the case is technically still open. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension took over as the lead investigative agency in 2010, and by 2015, they'd received around 90 tips, but none led to a breakthrough. 90 tips and nothing. While the search for Brandon still hasn't brought answers, his disappearance has had a lasting impact, especially through the passage of Brandon's Law in Minnesota. This is huge. Brian and Annette Swanson were super frustrated by the initial response they got from law enforcement. That suggestion that because Brandon was a 19-year-old adult, he had a right to be missing, and his disappearance might not be immediately alarming. So, they channeled their grief and determination into advocacy. They pushed for changes to make sure other families wouldn't face similar delays when reporting a missing adult who might be in danger. They turned pain into power. Their efforts, along with other advocates like the John Francis Foundation, paid off. Brandon's Law was signed into effect in Minnesota in 2009. It requires law enforcement agencies to take a missing person report without delay, no matter the adult's age, especially when it looks like the person might be endangered. It forces an immediate preliminary investigation and quick notification to other law enforcement agencies. The law also deals with the need to get things like DNA and dental records if the person isn't found within 30 days. This law was a really big step forward in protecting vulnerable adults and making sure these cases get a faster, stronger response. Annette Swanson said at the time, "This is a bittersweet moment for us. I would never want to be here, but I want to make a difference for other people." What incredible strength. The emotional toll on Brandon's family is just unimaginable. They continue to live with the never-ending pain of not knowing what happened to their son and brother. That porch light they left on symbolizes an enduring hope that he'll come back, a vigil against the crushing weight of all this uncertainty. It's heartbreaking. The disappearance of Brandon Swanson is a case that still haunts so many people. If you found this story compelling, please smash that like button and subscribe to our channel for more true crime investigations. More importantly, what are your theories about what happened to Brandon? Share your respectful thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Let's crack this. Even though so many years have passed, there's always a chance that someone, somewhere, knows something. Conclusion. 17 years later, the fields and waterways of southwestern Minnesota are still holding their secrets tight. Brandon Swanson walked into the darkness on May 14, 2008, and despite all the searching, the mystery of his final moments and what ultimately happened to him just won't go away. Was it a tragic accident in that unforgiving landscape or by the river? Did he succumb to the cold, or did he run into something way more sinister? The only thing that's certain is the huge hole his absence has left, and the questions that just won't fade. That chilling end to his last phone call, the baffling lack of any evidence, and the enduring mystery make Brandon Swanson's story a stark reminder of how quickly a life can be inexplicably wiped out. For his family, the search for answers, for some kind of closure, goes on. And for those of us who look into unsolved cases, Brandon's disappearance remains a truly haunting puzzle, a testament to the fact that sometimes, no matter how hard we try, the truth can stay just out of reach, lost somewhere in the night. This is one of the craziest mysteries ever,